Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome back to our Coronavirus Initiative series discussing some of the key issues related to college admissions. Oftentimes we discuss issues in this webinar series about things that are changing from year to year in the wake of the COVID crisis. But today we're discussing something that has not changed in years and years and years and years. And I would say for most people, if they know one thing about the college admissions process, they seem to know about the college essay. And we will be talking about that today. So this is sort of an evergreen topic. We're going to be offering even more detailed tutorials on this topic as we get into June, which we'll be announcing in some upcoming newsletters. In fact, I think tomorrow's newsletter will have a link to an actual workshop in June that we'll be holding. But today, I wanted to sort of cover stuff, give you guys a broad overview of the personal statement essay. My name is Bill Watson-Canning. I'm the president of UCA. If you've been on one of these webinars before, you've probably seen me at some point and getting to know my home office background quite well. But if you haven't, a little bit about who I am. I've been coordinating the essay work with UCA for the past several years. This is an area that's near and dear to my heart, and please sort of share some information with you. Let's talk about what the college essay is. The college essay, as most people mean it, is the common essay, common application essay. It's a 650-word prompt that demonstrates your ability to write clearly and concisely on a selected topic and distinguish yourself in your own voice. Now, in your own voice is very important. I'll be looping back to that in a bit. But let's go a little deeper in terms of what we mean. For most of the schools that most of you apply to, if you are applying to school for enrollment in the fall of 2021, you will apply either, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Let's talk about why you are writing the college essay. It's always the danger with PowerPoint. It forces you into a specific outline. Let's talk about why you were asked to write this 650-word thing in your own voice. If you've been on these webinars before, you've probably seen this form. It's a form used by Harvard College, but any school using a holistic admissions process is using a similar form. These schools are evaluating students along 3 different areas. The first is, of course, academics. I don't think we need to explain why they're interested in your academics and test scores. The second is your extracurricular record, right? What you are doing, sports, community engagement, arts organizations, employment if you have family commitments, what have you. And then the third big area is something called personal qualities. Some schools call it character. We like to think of it as the human side of you. What sort of person are you? Now, if you think about this, your academic record, it's pretty obvious to understand how that's communicated to the schools. You have a GPA, you got a transcript, you got some test scores. Your extracurricular record, well, we've talked about that on some past webinars, but you wind up listing 10 key activities, up to 10 key activities on your application, a few honors, what have you. But the personal qualities, well, that's something you got to communicate separately. And that is something that can only really be communicated through the areas on your application that are not as achievement focused. So teacher recommendations, interviews, and for purposes of today, your essay. The purpose of your essay is to help them understand what kind of a person you might be on a college campus, how you might contribute to the life of that campus. Are you going to be a pure taker, or are you going to be a giver and somebody who's going to make the community an even better place? All right, so what we're going to do now is talk about some of the myths around the college essay. As I say, this is the area of the application that if people know anything, they seem to know about the essay. And there is a lot of confusion about what the purpose of the essay is. Even having just explained to you that the purpose is to communicate some of your personal qualities, let's talk about some of the myths that are out there. Number 1, you got to choose your prompt carefully. Nope. Look, as I was starting to say a little earlier, when you apply to schools, in most cases, you will be completing either the common application or the coalition application. There are a few exceptions to this, MIT, Georgetown, University of California schools, but basically you are completing one of these two applications. In fact, usually the common application if you have a choice. And on both of these applications, after you fill in all of your academic information and your activities, there's going to be a writing section that goes to every school you apply to. So, you know, if you apply to 12 schools for the common application, all 12 will have the ability to see your main personal statement essay. And there are a bunch of prompts that you can choose from. There are 7 prompts on the Common App, usually about 5 prompts on the Coalition app. They haven't changed them in the past few years. You know, oftentimes people sort of get obsessed with reading the prompts. We actually tell people to not even bother looking at the prompts for a couple of reasons. Number one, you really don't need to, because the last prompt on both applications is share an essay on a topic of your choice. You could literally write about anything. If you want to write about what your favorite Harry Potter movie is, you are welcome to do that. It fits the last prompt on each application. I would not spend my college essay arguing about that, but it is in fact something that you are totally able to submit, and it is appropriate to a prompt. But beyond that, more seriously, there are certain words that recur in the prompt. In fact, there's one word that pops up on the common application, I believe it's 22 times, maybe 24. That is you, or your. Each of these prompts, no matter how they are phrased, if they're asking about your identity, interest, or talent, if they're talking about problems you'd like to solve, they're asking about you. They're asking them to tell them a story about you so that they can understand you a little better, and that by extension, they can start to picture, the person reading your application can start to picture what you might behave like on a college campus. That's really all it is. So if you are writing a personal story on your application, then you can look back later and you can figure out which prompt it's actually most appropriate to. But start with the story about you rather than trying to start from the prompt. All right, myth number 2, the essay is a writing sample. No. A few reasons for that. Number 1, these schools are not naive. They know that everybody knows about the college essay, the personal statement. They know that by the time you submit that college essay, your parents have looked at it, your English teacher has looked at it, your guidance counselor has looked at it, people like me may have looked at it, that friend down the street who once had an article published has looked at it. A lot of people have been over the essay. So the chances that you are somebody who's incapable of stringing 3 words together and it somehow got past all of those barriers to be submitted is pretty low. And so they are certainly aware that you've had some coaching to go through the main college essay. The second point I'd like to make is that basically every school you go to is going to require you during your first year to take a writing course. If America's top universities viewed their main commitment as enrolling students who were excellent writers already, as indicated by the college essay, and they certainly wouldn't feel that the first thing they need to do with every student who shows up on campus is teach them how to write. In fact, they don't think you know how to write at the college level. They're kind of right. So for that reason, they are not out there looking for people who can write like F. Scott Fitzgerald, which would be a little out of touch since this book's about 100 years old at this point. They're not looking for the most beautiful prose in the world. In fact, that can actually be counterproductive if your prose is sort of too good. Let me explain why. The people who read your application have to get through an insane number of applications every single day. They get about 20 to 25 minutes per application, and they're just going through them and through them and through them and through them and through them all day long for weeks on end, starting in January when the regular cycle happens. So I always like to imagine that person where it's 10:30 at night, they're exhausted, they've been through 18 applications already, they got 3 more in the pile. They would really just like to get back to their Netflix queue or maybe talk to their partner a little bit before bed, but they got to get through these applications. And if you're going to make that person work too hard to get through all sorts of 5-syllable words and elegant metaphors and all the rest, it's not going to work. You're not going to grab their attention. And the only goal we have is to tell them something memorable about you, because this is a marketing pitch. We are, in fact, trying to get them to buy you in the sense that they want to put you in their own class. And we just want to give them a little something they can remember you by, so that 6 weeks later, when they're sitting there having to argue about whether they take student A, student B, student C, they suddenly are remembering you and going, oh, right, the one with the magnetic poetry. Then you're in their brain. Very rarely are they going to remember, oh, that student who had the sweeping, the sweeping prose, as I would say. So no, I don't want you to submit anything where your subjects and verbs disagree, that seems incompetently written. But I do want you to submit something that feels authentic to your voice, that feels like it was written by a 17 or 18-year-old. And to that purpose, there have actually been a few cases where we have intentionally had students leave an error in the essay that might not be, according to the elements of style on that bookshelf back there, correct. But if it sounds like a 17 or 18-year-old, that can be to your benefit. All right, myth number 3, the essay is a place to highlight your most important accomplishments. No. I'm not saying you don't get to talk about the things you have done, but your accomplishments are redundant. Why? Because if you spend your whole essay talking about this great award you won, think about where the essay falls in the application. I have up here a picture of the common application, and you will enter in your personal profile information about your family, your education, your testing. Then you enter in all your activities. Remember I mentioned a few minutes ago that you enter in all the things you've done, that resume stuff, the honors you've won, which actually goes under education. If you were a state champion in tennis, it's going to go under your activities. And that is literally the last thing that the person reading your application gets to before they get to your writing section, as they are reading through your whole application, as I say, in about 20 to 25 minutes, if that. And if they have just read all this stuff about all the tennis that you played, and then they flip the page and the very first thing they read about on your essay is about all the tennis you played and the awards you won, it's completely redundant. They just read that. The purpose of the essay is to tell them something different. Now, I'm not saying that if tennis is super important to your life that you shouldn't talk about it anywhere in your application. Of course you should. It'd be a little weird if you didn't. There's some art to it. There is an activities essay that you will likely have to write for certain schools, which you may not be aware of is, while we are talking about the main essay today, there are other essays you will have to write for specific schools. And beyond that, if you write about an activity that's important to you somehow in your personal statement, there's kind of an art to talking about, yes, I have all these great achievements. But the better purpose of that personal statement essay is to actually show them something personal about how you interact with other people, right? So all the awards I won, but one thing I really remember is this trip I took with some friends. We were at a tournament, and after the tournament, we went out for ice cream, and XYZ happened. Then they can start to picture who you are as a person. Next myth. This one is not perhaps as widespread. It can be in some cultures, though. I've found the best essays show humility. Look, I am not asking you to come off as an obnoxious braggart on your essay. Nobody likes somebody who spends all their time crowing about their achievements, and I just told you that the essay is not the place to talk about achievements. But what we've seen in some cases in the past, most egregiously with an essay that began with the words, "I am deficient," is that sometimes students feel that they need to show that they have learned a lesson by talking about how they realized how inadequate they were. Overdoing the humility is a problem. Look, Americans generally are a positive culture. We value resilience. We are interested in what you have learned. So you might get knocked down, but what is it you learn from the experience and where do you go from there? Or as they put it in a Batman movie, probably about 4 Batman actors ago, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. I think that was Batman Begins. I don't normally put superhero stuff on here, but I grabbed it because this appears on the blog of a little school in Massachusetts called MIT, explaining what they're looking for in essays. So by all means, show some difficult thing that you went through if you have that, and please don't obsess if you don't. But if you're going to do that, focus on the positive lesson you learned, the resilience you showed, the step you're taking to go forward from there. And the last myth is that the essay is the most important part of your application. Oh, that one's actually kind of true. Well, partly true. I mean, look, if you are sitting on an 850 combined SAT score and you might have to take a gap year because you have a prison term coming up, then probably the best essay in the world is not going to get you into an Ivy League school. It is just one component in the larger application. At the same time, there are a lot of people who are applying to schools with similar test scores, with similar levels of achievement. So how do they separate themselves from each other? How does Harvard choose from all the 1,500 and above SAT scores and all the National Honor Society members and whatever else you have? Well, the differentiation at that point, one place it's going to come is kind of, do they like you? Can they picture you on a campus? And to that end, telling a kind of personal story about yourself makes a difference. Now, there are traps. I have up here something that a real life admissions officer posted to a group message we're on. This was a few years back. He talked about how he sees that there's a lot of pressure on the essay to make it a unique piece of prose that leads to the same trite, overdone essay about mission trips, horses, student council, summer camp. There are a lot of similar experiences, traps that people fall into because they think that it sounds significant. The most cliched one is the mission trip essay. And that's not to say you can't possibly write a mission trip essay, but a lot of people have the same experience in a volunteer situation. It is laudable to do these things, but we are looking for something that tells them a little bit more about what makes you different from 7 other students who have the same kind of experience. So he goes on to say that certainly phone calls and emails when a student is off, speak to them about who they are, who a student is, when you're trying to show the best side. It is about being genuine and authentic. Write about Netflix shows or loving pizza or walking the dog or playing the banjo. It does not have to be so serious. And this is absolutely true. Some of the best essays I've seen from students who achieve top schools are about getting together with some friends to create a rap album, or trying to take up a sport that that the student was no good at, and continuing to fall down. But what would he learn from that experience rather than all the amazing things he was doing elsewhere? Genuine and authentic, story about who you are. Now, how do we get there? One of the things that we work with students to do is develop something we call a personal thesis. It's a fancy way of saying, who are you? Because that is the purpose of the essay. Remember, I said that one word that keeps popping up again and again on the application essay prompts is you. Well, you better be able to answer that really painful 3-word question, who are you? Or to put it another way, what's one thing that a school ought to know about you that isn't already in your resume? Who are you when you're off? Who are you when you're with your friends? What kind of person are you? What do you do? Now, from there, as I say, this slide used to say very few students have cured cancer. Obviously, a lot of medical energy is going elsewhere right now, or hopefully both places. But regardless, very few students have saved the Pope from a burning building, as we like to say. There are a few students who go to the Olympics, not this year, unfortunately. Very few students are accomplished neurosurgeons by age 18. It's okay, really. In fact, the rare student who has incredible accomplishments, Malala winning a Nobel Peace Prize at age 16 or 17, the essay doesn't really matter for that kind of student. But there are very, very few of those students, even at the top schools, trust me. But if you are on a sports team, if you just hang out with friends, if you took a crazy camping trip, We call them vignettes. These stories about you usually interacting with your friends, peers, because that's what you're going to be doing on a college campus, is interacting with peers. If you can find those vignettes that tell us a little something about who you are and what you are like, then from there, we can sort of pop out and help them remember you. And the structure that we push for is always sort of a tell, show, tell structure. We will talk about this more in a tutorial that we'll be running in June. But the idea here is that we don't want to make it a mystery. Remember, I mentioned earlier, you are not trying to write prose that is impossible to penetrate. Somebody has to work really hard to understand all your metaphors. No, we're going to take the person reading your essay by the hand at the beginning and just say, look, this is who I am. Just so you know, I'm somebody who supports my friends. Okay, a lot of people can say that they're somebody who supports their friends. So now let me show you. Let me tell you a story about this time when my friend broke his goggles at a swim meet and I had to scramble around to fix things. Okay, now suddenly I see, oh, I see, yeah, that's how you do support your friends. That's what you do. I'm not saying this is the most exciting story in the history of the world. On the other hand, it's entirely possible, if this is written well enough, that 6 weeks later, I'm going to remember the student and go, right, broken goggles. And if I've got that one thing I can hold on to, then that's going to make it that much harder for me to take that student who I kind of like and move that student into the reject pile. I'm just going to keep that student in the maybe pile. And the longer you can stay in the maybe pile, the better chance you have of moving to that yes pile. And then at the end, you know, again, we're not trying to make this a big mystery. This is not some puzzle that needs to be solved. And we're reminding them, look, I support people. I'm going to keep doing it. That's where I'm headed. And when you get that structure, when you tell a personal story about yourself, much more than worrying about great writing or reiterating all the achievements you have or anything else, you get that sort of simple structure, then you have done the work you need to do on the personal statement. Then you've got them liking you, you've got them remembering you, and you put yourself in good shape. For your other essays, but we'll talk about those other essays in the webinar in a couple of weeks' time. For now, I want to thank you all for coming here. I hope everybody's continuing to stay safe and healthy as things start to slowly, tentatively, perhaps reopen. I know a number of you are also dealing with AP exams this week, so I applaud you for putting up with all the craziness from College Board at that end. But I hope that you join us, or some parents join us next week to talk about some parenting strategies as the application season looms. We tend to kick off our own application season work after Memorial Day, get students moving on the essay once the school year is kind of winding down. But for now, those of you who are in school, those of you who might still be taking APs or getting ready for finals in this sort of crazy distance learning year, I wish you the best, and I wish you good health, and I wish you good essay writing in June and July and beyond. I'm sorry. I wish you good essay writing for the rest of the year. And thank you as always for attending, and we will talk to you again next week. Thank you.